Hey, I am here with Mario and Lyn Potts in their home, and we just wanted to spend some time just talking together with you guys during this season right now. Can we just say this has been a weird season for a long time now between, coronavirus a few months ago and still trying to walk that out, and then now with the murder of George Floyd and the tension just really across our nation right now. Just wanted to spend some time talking with you guys about that and just how that's affecting you, and specifically, how is it affecting you guys and your family and your kids and your marriage, and just what are your thoughts on that?
The whole George Floyd thing, it has ripped off a Band-Aid that probably needed to be ripped off a long time ago. I think it opened a big can of worms, and maybe we won't put those worms back in the bucket, once this is all settled in. It has opened up racism. It has opened up issues for police officers. I am a police officer, and, we gain that respect in droplets and we lose it in buckets. And we're probably pretty empty right now, but it's what we do with it now.
Right.
What do I do with it? What do you do with it?
Right.
I think that dictates how we're going to move forward.
I kind of remember when I met Mario, it was like at the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement when we first started dating, started getting married. And so I almost kind of felt like, okay, maybe it won't be this bad. But seeing the video and everything and seeing how far all this has gone, it really has had me question and reevaluate myself.
Right.
Like, what do I need to do as a wife to a police officer, and what do I need to do as a mother to prepare my children to live in this fallen world?
Right.
It's not easy to be here as a Black woman, as a Black man, but then you add the fact that I'm raising children, and then I have to be a support system for him. And so it's really caught me to just self-evaluate, like, what do I need to do here? I can't fix the world, but I can, do something in my family and help, make better people out in the world, So for me, that's the biggest thing. I've had to self-reflect. I've had to see, what does Mario need from me, and what do I need to do to prepare my children, to be Black people in America.
Right.
Because it is hard. It's not, we're going to call a thing, it's not going to go away. Racism is here, but how do I make my children better people in this world? So.
Yeah. For you as a mother of, again, Black children, and then also being married to a Black police officer who understands this as well, how do you teach your kids to live in that world, but to not be fearful, but to be wise, but to honor Christ and all those type things? I know that's a really loaded question, and if we had all those answers, we wouldn't be having this interview. But how do you raise them up in that? How do you teach them to walk in this world, but to not live in fear at the same time?
Not living in fear, people who know me, that's my biggest catchphrase. I'm we don't live in fear. That's not how we live our lives. Every decision I've ever made, even working where I work, where I met Mario, was if I'm afraid, then I need to talk to God about it and I need to face it. And I feel like that's what I'm going to teach my children. I'm pointing it all back to Christ. We're not going to live in fear. Fear will come, and whenever, let's bring it back to COVID-19. Whenever COVID-19 started, and I work in the ER, I'm a nurse, and the pandemic, it was so heavy, and I remember feeling all that fear, and God told me, he was like, your prime example on how to live life is Jesus Christ. Was he ever afraid? Yes. He was fearful. There were times he was scared, but fear was never his drive.
Right.
And I'll just be honest with my children. I'll tell them, look, you are going to be afraid. Fear is going to come, and fear may even linger, but fear is not going to drive you. He may be in the car, but he will not have the steering wheel. So I feel like that's what I'm going to teach my children. I'm going to be honest with them. I'm big on honesty. Call a thing a thing. You're going to be afraid. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be scared. And you might do things looking back on may regret, but you have to understand that God is your example. Jesus is your example. And I feel like God's don't focus on how am I going to fix racism? How am I going to make sure they're good people? God's focus on me. And if I teach that to my children, then God is going to give them the answers. He's giving me the answers, So that's what I try to focus on. Okay, let's talk about it. We've had conversations with Bella. She's our oldest. And Israel, he's 2. So, he don't know. But just thinking about, those conversations and always bring them back to Christ. And, Mario can attest that we always try to bring it back to Jesus because he's faced everything,
How do you balance those two worlds of being a cop being African American in this society right now with the climate that it is, like, I know that has to be so difficult.
Well, I mean, I've been black longer than more people go to college. 35 years, so I've had like a lot of training, a lot of training in the world and how to deal with it. As a young professional first starting at the police department, my eyes were like open very wide. People didn't want to deal with me. They didn't want to deal with a black cop or a black police officer. I had to get some tough skin and find ways to navigate around that. But I've always, I love people. It don't matter what color people are. I love people, and really, like take our church for example. I love everybody there. Really don't matter what they think about me when they go home. But maybe one day my kindness will rub off on them. And we got to teach our kids the same thing. If we let other people dictate who we are, then we're not living for Christ at all. I mean, when I became a sergeant, I was a black sergeant over, there was 8 other white males that worked with me.
Wow.
Sometimes people ask for a supervisor and I show up and they suddenly don't want a supervisor anymore. But, by the time I was sergeant, I had the power to say, I guess you ain't gonna get anybody today. But it breaks my heart that we still have to deal with that. But at the end of the day, I signed up to help everybody. I stood in front of God and said I love you and I believe that you're in my heart, and that's what I have to display when I'm out on the streets. Yes, it's gotten easier. I don't know if the world's gotten better or it's just gotten easier for me, but I would like to that's a question that I have to sit and think about.
I want to ask this, like you were talking about, being a supervisor over, 8, white men and whatnot, and people going, I'm not interested in that. I also know that, there's the reverse, in your world as well, that so now you've got, trying to earn the respect of white cops, but just by the fact that you're a cop now, I know there's some circles, especially in this climate today, that all of a sudden you don't have the respect of the black community and some as well. Like, can you kind of walk through that and what that's like and how you navigate that in this world right now?
I always go back to the beginning compared to now. Initially, I became a cop where I grew up at. I walked, lived every single day there. So, it was very hard even from the black community being a police officer. Uncle Tom's, whatever other names they could call me. That probably breaks every black officer's heart.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a different color, or, I'm not black because I'm a cop. That never made sense to me. But those are comments that I hear. But like I said, did it get better? I don't know. But, did I change with it? Yes, I did. But, now I have a lot of respect in the community, on both sides. And I think it's because of how I carry myself, not because of what anybody else did for me.
So as a 47-year-old white male born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, lived all over the United States, understanding that I've never been black, never will be black, how do I, what do I do from here? As we walk away from this interview, living in Carrollton, Georgia, here in West Georgia, today in 2020, like as a brother in Christ, what do I do? How do I live out loving my neighbor well, specifically the black community? How do I love my neighbor well today?
I think you do pretty well already, not because you're just sitting in my house.
That's the right answer.
Change nothing.
You said that perfectly.
But I think the main thing is just not ignoring it. If you love me, you wouldn't let anybody, disrespect,
Right.
like black people or the black race. And I'm not saying disrespect Mario personally,
Right.
because we can already establish that we have a friendship.
Right.
But, just, a generalized Mario, I feel like that's not okay. And I feel like a good majority of the people, I don't feel like they're racist. I don't get that remotely. I think it's a little bit of not understanding.
Right.
Like you talked about privilege earlier. I'll never understand that. But you'll never understand what it's like to be, black and fighting against the privilege either.
Right.
But just starting the conversation, like, opportunities like this to sit down and try to understand.
Yeah.
Act like you care,
Yeah.
and care. And I feel like, that's exactly what people want. It's unity. It's not a divide, say I'm right and you right too, and we
Right.
still have a line in the middle. I think the lunch table need to be blended all the time.
Just say something, say anything. Say,
Right.
I don't know, something. Say, I don't get it, help me, something.
Yeah.
I feel like not saying anything and just blowing it off or being silent does more damage than people realize. Like, I ain't gonna say nothing, I don't know. I'm like, no, say something.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know. And I also feel like what you said in the beginning about privilege, I feel like white privilege doesn't mean racism.
Right.
I feel like that's where the lines
Yeah,
get blurred. Like,
totally.
if somebody admits that they have privilege, they're admitting to being racist. No.
We get so defensive.
Yeah,
over
I mean,
that.
you're not admitting to that.
Right.
I feel like you're just admitting to that, society sees me a little different than they see you, and
Right.
that's okay. And I feel like having conversations, being open, and just saying something, anything, to a person of color, just to gain a little bit more understanding. I feel like anybody in any relationship wants to be understood and wants to be heard. And if you give that to any African American, Hispanic, anybody, they'll feel loved.
Yeah.
And you don't need to do the most and feel like you gotta, just know all the things about black culture, because that's not what we want either. We want you to just get to know us
Right.
individually and collectively. I know it's like a lot, but I feel like individually get to know me as a person, but collectively try to understand,
Yeah.
as best as you can, and ask God for forgiveness and things you can't do. I feel like for both white and black, you're gonna meet people who don't care, who are stuck in their ways and they just want to hate because it's just fun. But for the most part, we just want to be heard and we just want to be understood. So
That's awesome. Thank you for that. I think that as a white man, I'll tell you, I think that I think we're a lot of, and I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know for myself, I have this fear of like, I don't know what to say because no matter what I say, I feel like I'm gonna say the wrong thing and it's not good enough, and it's just and it's almost paralyzing. And so it's so good to I guess hear from you guys that just say something, just even if it's just, hey, I love you and I don't know what to say, like that's and I think at its core, I mean, I think it's funny, it shouldn't be rocket science. I mean, I think that's human nature is, whatever color we are, we all just want to be heard and know that, somebody loves us, and so that's helpful. Thank you. And I would just say, and I think you guys live it out, man. Like, thank you for having grace for, when we blow it. 'Cause, I mean, seriously, because it's just, to me, that's so, it just lets the weight off.
I also think, Shannon, like, we all blow it.
yeah,
I don't want you to sit here and beat yourself up for blowing it.
Yeah.
We all blow it. It's whether we make an excuse for it or, we fix it.
Yeah.
So it's not just white people blowing it against black people or, black people blowing it against white people. I think the whole issue is we all need to come together and see each other as one.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the big thing here.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Like I said, we all blow it. I mean, just because this time it's black on this side of the fence, next week it might be white on that side of the fence. But we need to, if we find a middle, we can always run home.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
We can always run home instead of running left or right.
Yeah.
And that home is, of course, Christ.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I also feel like, I think I posted something that says not a white or black, not white versus black, it's people versus racism, and I feel like, we're on the same team. Although we're not the same color, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
We want people to love each other. And so if I hear a black person saying something about a white person, I'm like, that's not okay. Like, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're here to, to spread love. So just because me and you are the same race, I'm not going to agree with you. And I'd hope and pray as, a white man, you do the same thing. If somebody who's white says something about a black person,
Yeah.
it's not, for me, it's not a white or black thing. It's about a race thing. Race across, racism generally should not be a thing anymore, I don't feel, especially in the Christian community.
Oh, yeah.
But, so I feel like if we realize we're on the same team, it helps with, I don't want to say the wrong thing. What do I do? What do I don't? Like, no, I'm with you. I'm standing by you. you know, I'm not in your skin, but I'm standing right where I'm for you, you know?
Yeah.
So.
I love it. Thank you. And you nailed it. I think it's meeting in the middle, and we just got to remember as Christians that the middle is Christ. And when we can just say, Christ, it's you, then this other stuff I truly believe, fixes itself when we can go, nah, it's Christ, it's Christ, it's Christ. I think the hard part is the uphill challenge for us together is convincing a world that doesn't want to hear it's Christ that, nah, he really is the only answer. And if you watch us walk this out, you're going to be attracted to it, I promise. And I think that's where we got to keep in mind, that a world is watching us and going, say, I thought you were supposed to respond differently. Why do you look the same? And that's a good reminder that Christ is he's that middle that we meet in. So
we do have to make these relationships look attractive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what church do. That's what every organization do. But, we can make our relationship look attractive, and it'll be catchy.
Yeah.
We at least have the reach of our community.
Yeah.